Hi, welcome to a lecture on the muscular system. This is a general lecture. We've talked about some of this, but let's just go over it one more time. All right, so what do our muscles do? The main thing you think of muscles and their actions is that they move things. And that's very good. They move parts of our bodies and they technically act as lever systems with the bones, that they are the part that applies the force against the other force like gravity or load, and they act as levers with our bones. And so they give us also our individual shape, and they help us protect our inner organs, our abdominal organs, and they help us maintain good posture, circulate our blood, and generate some heat. Just a reminder, there's like over 600 skeletal muscles in the body, and 150 are in the neck and the head. All right, there are three main types that we've been looking at, skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. Skeletal is what you think of when you think of a muscle, and it is what we do, what's called voluntary. I can tell my arm to move, I can make it move. I cannot really tell my heart to beat. That's sort of involuntary. That's another type of muscle called cardiac muscle. I should have also put on here that it's involuntary. You can influence it by running, it would increase it, but you can't sit here and say, I want to increase my heart rate. That's hard to do. But anyway, so it has this like reflex response and it's called involuntary. So make sure you know those two terms, voluntary and involuntary. And in the case of voluntary muscles, that we have control, conscious control, involuntary, we do not. So when you think of your smooth muscles, those are the ones that are also involved in digestion. You can't tell your stomach, hey, I want you to digest now. It's going to happen. It's controlled by a reflex part of your nervous system that we'll talk about soon. Same with cardiac. It has, so with skeletal muscle, it's more striated or striped looking. Smooth is smooth, and cardiac has similar, somewhat looks like striated, but it really is separated by having these communication areas called intercalated discs. You should associate that with cardiac muscle. So this is what you can see. This is the cardiac muscle. See, it's somewhat striated, smooth is not, and it has this intercalated disc that has some space here. It looks similar to a skeletal muscle, but this is more organized, and this is they're hard to tell the difference. I'll give you that. But smooth muscle is very smooth. But this picture kind of shows you where these muscles are found. All right. Again, know these terms, voluntary and involuntary. When you think of what we can control, that's our skeletal. And we need to do this. We need to jump, run, play sports. All right, these are some major muscles that we're going to learn, but there's more that I have been giving you in lab. But your deltoids, biceps, abdominals, quadriceps, pecs, lats, traps, tris, glutes, hams, and your calf muscle, the gastrocnemius. The deltoids found in the shoulder, that's right up in here. There's a couple different parts to your deltoid. Biceps are what you know of as your muscle arm. The abdominals are four main muscle groups in your abdomen area, your core. Your quadriceps are your thigh muscles. So those of you that may struggle with some of these other terms, thigh is the term for the upper part of the leg, and quadriceps are located there. Your pectorals are your chest muscles. Your latissimus dorsi are muscles of the back. The traps are kind of back shoulders. Triceps are these right here. Your glutes. Gluteals are your butt muscles. Your hamstrings are your upper thigh, but on the back side. And your gastrocnemius is referred to as the calf muscle. All right, moving on. These are some that describe their main actions. I'll let you read these, but you should start to be familiar with the terms that we've been using, extension, flexion, those sorts of things. All right, some of these involuntary muscles, we've already talked about this, but they work automatically. Think of breathing, cardiac, digestive, and even your eye muscles and your pupils dilating. That's why they know when you might have some brain damage if your eye reflexes aren't working. All right, so cardiac is a special type of involuntary muscle. It's only found in the heart, and it is involved in constantly contracting, working as a pump without tiring to deliver blood to all parts of your body. It works automatically, but it's under constant supervision by your nervous system and chemical control, because anything that your body interprets as a problem could result in a change to your cardiac function. It could increase stroke volume, can increase the heart rate. All of these things are communicated through these intercalated discs and communication channels. very special. All right, we've been talking a lot lately about naming of muscles, and these are some good examples, but they're basically, we can use other characteristics, but size and shape and location and action are some of the common ones, even the type of fiber that it has. Your gluteus is actually, your gluteus means location of the buttocks, but if you add maximus, it would be the bigger one, the maximum size butt muscle. Pectoralis is located in the chest. The brachii are located in the arm. You should know that one because there's a lot of important blood vessels that are associated with that, especially with nurses. And frontalis is at the frontal of the bone of the skull. But we have been working on locations because it's helpful to think of these. So again, size, there's some terms. Maximus means largest, major means large, minor small, longest is long, minimus is small, brevis is short. So be brief, brevis, keep it short. So think of these terms, and sometimes it's like I said with the gluteus muscles, you have more than one. And so you look at the big one, the maximus, the minimus is the smallest one, for example. By shape, shape is a good reason to name a muscle. It could be your deltoid is triangular, the rhomboid is like a rhombus, the latissimus is, think of latitude, it's flat, the teres is round, and trapezius is like a trapezoid. So these are some examples of those that you could see. Again, those you could say the deltoid is named after the Greek letter, but think more of shape in this case. The Greek letter is describing a triangular shape. Okay. All right. Sometimes they're named by the action that they take. Abductor, it moves a structure away from the body. That's the action of abduction. Think of the act of abducting something or taking it. That's how I try to remember, because the opposite of that is when you're already out, I've already abducted, now I'm going to adduct by bringing it toward my body. So those are terms that are used. It's the muscle action that describes, that names the muscle. And sometimes it's a flexor or extender. And if you think of flexion, it's the bending of a structure. You decrease the angle. So right now there's a large angle, right? And if I decrease it, that's flexion. Extending it increases the angle. Levitators lift or elevate a structure. And you can see this, hopefully, whoops. I thought I could play this, but maybe not. But this is a video that you should be able to play that shows the elevation of the shoulder. All right, sometimes we name them by the direction of the fibers. Rectus is straight, transverse is across, oblique diagonal, and orbicularis is circular. So think of those. Here's some examples of those. We also sometimes use the word pennate and bipinnate and circular and convergent, but mostly we've been focusing on these as names for our muscles. Right, there are, this is something new. We haven't talked about this yet, but how do our muscles work? There are basically three ways that we'd like to describe a muscle contraction. And this is used extensively when you work out. You might choose to do concentric actions, but usually a lift includes both concentric and eccentric. And so I'll talk about those in a minute because usually it's a combined motion. And so when you shorten, that's called a concentric. When you lengthen, that's called an eccentric. Sometimes you want to accentuate the eccentric, and that will help lengthen the muscle. That's a good thing to do sometimes in certain situations. Like for me, when I ruptured my Achilles, I wanted to kind of lengthen my muscle, the strength of it. It's still a contraction. But I wanted to overall, instead of building doing a lot of exercises that would make my muscles bigger and tighter. I wanted to lengthen my muscles. And so anyway, isometric is when there's muscle contraction, but there's not a change in length. Isotonic means the muscle's contracting and it's either making itself shorter or lengthening. So those are some terms to be familiar with, and they show up again here. Isotonic and concentric, it's when our muscles are shortened and the end of the muscles move closer together. Think of the biceps during the pull-up part. Most sport movements are found in that one. Eccentric is the lengthening, or they lengthen under tension. There's still tension, and it's when you lower that bicep down. And plyometric exercises use a lot of eccentric contractions. I kind of like those too, but I'm not really doing those right now like I should. All right, isometric is basically our postural muscles, and our muscles are staying the same length as they contract. There's not much movement. You can think of doing a tug of war or maintaining your posture. Many of our sporting movements involve stabilizing muscles that sort of hold our body together as the parts move. All right, typically, how do muscles work together? They often work in pairs, and hopefully the lab that you do will show you this, how your triceps and biceps work. There's if you think of a bicep curl, for example, your biceps are gonna be more involved in the flexion when I'm making that angle shorter, and the triceps more in the extension, but they're gonna work in pairs. If one muscle contracts to bring two bones together, the other one is kind of need them to bring them back apart again. That's keeping it very simplified for now. But you can see some other ways. We've talked about how they work together. Some of the terms that we use for this are agonist and antagonist. The prime movers are the agonists, and they are doing the major action, and they provide that main force to get the bone moving through its joint. Think of the biceps during flexion. The antagonists are the relaxing. It's when it's think of the triceps during, I should say, extension here, but I'm sorry, during flexion, and it's allowing that movement to take place. So synergists are when you have these stabilizing muscle areas around the prime mover, and they're fine tuning our movement. Think of the brachialis during flexion. All right. And for some, they just give the muscles a firm base. In this case, during flexion, it would be the fixators. So yeah, those are some terms that you'll hear later in your careers, hopefully, as you go. So again, this is an example of the flexion, the prime movers, the bicep, the synergist, the brachialis, the antagonist is the triceps, and the fixator is the muscle that the rhomboids is kind of holding the scapula close. All right, so how do muscles attach to bones? Muscles are usually attached to two or more different bones, but it can vary. They have these fibers at the end of them, and it's a flexible cord called a tendon, and that attaches to the bone. And the fibers of these tendons are embedded in what's called the periosteum of the bone, and that anchors the tendon strongly, and it sort of helps spread the force of contraction. Keep this in mind, tendons join muscle to bone, ligaments join bone to bone. Oops. All right, this is so our muscles are made up of cells called muscle fibers, and they are like thread-like bundles, fibers that are in bundles, and that's what does the contraction and shortening because the fibers do it. I mean, it's the fibers that are changing. We'll talk more about this in a different lecture, but think of the functional units. These myofibrils are what they called. It's the skeletal muscle cell, and they're bundles of these contracting proteins. They don't, it just kind of depends on how much force is needed, is how much of those will contract at a time. All right, very briefly, we have two types of fibers, but there's types within those types. So there's more detail that you'll learn later in exercise, your exercise physiology and your whole major if you're on that side. There's two main types of fibers that we see in skeletal muscle, and they're called slow twitch and fast twitch. Many of you athletes might know these already. Slow twitch are involved in slower running activities. Fast twitch are involved in faster running activities or higher intensity activities. And so let's take a brief look at those. You'll do more of these later, and there's different types within each category. Keep that in mind. And there's a lot of details that we could look at here. I need to get a better picture. But anyway, fast twitch muscles, are we doing fast twitch first? Okay, so fast twitch are associated with sprinters. Think of that. They really don't have a great amount of ability to consume oxygen. There's not a great oxygen supply there. They tire very quickly. They're often used with less oxygen available. We call that anaerobic. They are stronger than slow twitch, and they can contract very quickly. That's what makes them good for sprinters, but they're used when we need fast, powerful movements or high intensity exercises in what we would call exercises where you're short of breath, anaerobic. And so think of those types of sports that would involve fast twitch muscles. Slow twitch, think of slow running. You use a lot of oxygen. There's a lot of oxygen ready and available. You can work for a long time. Think of marathoners without getting tired. They're just not as strong. They take longer to contract, but they can you can use oxygen so they can move longer, and they're using all types of exercises actually. And so, but think of them with long distance running. So usually I mean, you need to think of these as what's dominating, but every muscle contains a mixture of these fibers, but the mixture is different based on where the type of muscle that it is. So for example, the gastrocnemius, your calf muscle, contains a lot of fast twitch fibers. So you can, um, standing on your toes would make you tired. So the mixture is different for different people. Some based on your anatomy, you might have more slow twitch than fast twitch. But basketball and soccer are kind of a combination of both. All right. So how does this relate to performance? If you have more fast twitch fibers in your legs, that's gonna be the quicker person here. You have more to fire off. All right. So this is just a look at some different. The dark red are fast twitch. This would be more of uh, there's a high concentration of fat twitch, so this person is prone to be kind of over fat. And anyway, let's not worry too much about this slide. We're going to go on. I think that's it. Oh, no, we got a little bit more. Sorry. My bad, going too fast here. So let's look at some changes in sport. Well, shoot. So you can see there's a couple things. When in these pictures, what you're seeing is what we call atrophy. When the muscle is not used, it changes in size. All right, it gets smaller. We call that atrophy. That happens a lot when you have a cast or an injury where you're not using it. You can see in this image, the person's leg is a lot smaller. If I ask you a question on the test, which leg did this person likely have a cast on, you should point to this one, and the condition would be atrophy. On the other side, if you are doing, we can increase the muscle cell in size, and it's called hypertrophy. And that's what happens when people lift weights. They increase their muscle size. And so that's called hypertrophy, and that's a very common thing that people that are lifting weights are paying attention to, depending on what they want their body to look like. All right, what happens when we exercise? This is very, very brief, but you'll go into depth on this if you are in exercise science and in exercise physiology, but mostly briefly, we'll talk about it here. When your muscles need to exercise, they need to increase the blood flow. You got to get more oxygen to those tissues. And so what that term is called oxygen consumption. Your muscles are consuming it, all right? And that will help them contract more often and more quickly and get more recruit fibers and muscles cells to contract. It will also raise the temperature of the muscles. You generate some heat. We're going to use up our energy resources of ATP. And there was another one that we haven't talked about, but it's called creatine phosphate, CP. That's used in very quick seconds. And then you go, but you want to use your energy. This is famously what ATP is used for. In addition to cellular work, we think of it as helping us when we exercise. We also got to get rid of waste products like carbon dioxide. And there's some time, we won't go into detail at this moment about lactic acid, but acid can build up, and we've got to kind of clear it from our muscles to have them effectively operate. So we need good energy use there. And there's some debate about this, whether or not these are legit. Like the lactic acid system is sort of a process when there's not enough oxygen available that your body uses to generate energy, but it's been blamed for causing muscle soreness, but there's some debate about that. But anyway, once our glucose is used up, we have to go to our storage. We could use glycogen and fat. And anyway, we can overuse of muscles can obviously lead to strain and soreness. All right, I think that might be it. Let me double check. Yeah, that's it. So hope that helps. And we're going to stop here.